Afternoon, everybody. Thanks for attending. We're just going to give people another minute here to sign in. We still see some people getting logged in, so give us one more minute and we'll get started soon. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Russ Clark. I'm the Business Development Manager at BTRG. Before we get started with the presentation, just want to go over a couple housekeeping items really quick. All attendees are in listen-only mode. If you wish to ask a question, please use the question box located near the bottom of the control panel. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible at the end of the webinar, but if we're unable to, we'll be sure to follow up directly with you afterwards. Today's session is being recorded. Sometime early next week, you'll receive a follow-up email with the link to the webinar replay. And to get things started, I'd like to introduce our two hosts for today's presentation, BTRG's Senior Solutions Architect, Janet Martin, and our VP of Sales and Marketing, Troy Villmer. They have a lot of great information for you today, so without any further delay, I'll turn things over to Janet. Janet, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Russ. I appreciate it. So today, with the 2016 Year of the Assessment, the agenda we'd like to follow, first of all, we're going to do a brief overview of the webinar and why we decided that it was really important to share this information with all of you today. Troy will take you through an overview of the session, and then I'll jump back in and walk you guys through the assessment process that we follow here at BTRG to help our customers that have all these questions that you may be faced with today. After that, we'll go through what I'm calling Scorecard Categories. So we'll talk through the areas of focus or interest that our assessment follows. And then lastly, we'll go through the benefits of doing an assessment and why it may be right for you and your organization to perform an assessment at this time of the year. So with no further ado, there is our email addresses. If you guys have any questions, like Russ said, at the end you can send us questions via email or in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to get back to you as quickly as possible. So now I'm going to have Troy go ahead and give us an overview of the session today.
Thanks, Janet, and good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to join us here. We thought this was a fairly important topic. From a sales perspective, I run into this often with various clients, and from a delivery perspective, we're doing a lot of these assessments and we're finding a lot of value in doing them. So as you can see on this slide here, over 50% of organizations are creating or updating their system strategy in 2016. This is due to what I like to call the perfect storm of progress overload. It's a very unique time in our business. I'm sure if you're interested in systems and cloud and PeopleSoft, it's a very unique time. You have a lot of choice out there. I like to say we have an unprecedented amount of choice today in today's environment. One of the things that make up this perfect storm is it is a pivotal time for critical business applications. Only a few years ago, we would hear when I walked into a client, they would say, you know what, our goal is to use our systems to do more for less, which was sort of obvious. Today, that's sort of evolved. Now it's clients' expectations to do more for less. And along with that expectation comes the need for employees to interact with the data in a different way, a way that's more time-saving and streamlined, where the work that they need to interact with comes to them versus them going to the work, if that makes sense. And I think systems are evolving to do that. It's how do you change your business process to adopt to that mode. The second piece, there's a major shift in the system paradigm. Unless really you've been living in a cave, you may have heard the word cloud once or twice, and probably many times from your Oracle rep if you deal with them. There's a reason for that. We've just passed the tipping point in cloud adoption, and now that I just read, over 50% of all new applications purchased are cloud applications. So even as an organization here, it took us a while to really get a grip on, is cloud coming? Is cloud coming? Well, yes, cloud's here, and it's going to impact you in some manner. How do you decipher what works for you? You know, a big question is really, what is cloud now? Is cloud the actual application that you're utilizing? Is it where your data center exists? Is it, you know, what makes up cloud and how does that work and why is it effective? You know, to even confuse the issue even further, they just released a PeopleSoft cloud architecture with the newest version of 855 tools, which enables PeopleSoft to be easily run in the cloud format. So I guess some of the questions we're facing at clients are, I'm doing a cloud evaluation. Should I include PeopleSoft now in that cloud evaluation? Because it's sort of a cloud option at this point, which is interesting. Really, it comes down to there's just a lot of options. Between the wealth of advancements in 9.2, including the use of the PeopleSoft Update Manager and the need for our clients to adopt a roadmap and strategy to digest that amount of change, mixed with PeopleTools 855, which was released in December. And if you haven't been able to take a look at 855 tools, do so. It was transformational. Not often do we say that about PeopleSoft and PeopleTools. PeopleTools was transformational in the way you interact with data, the way that you use DPKs to streamline POM image updates. There's just a lot to it. You know, mixed with that, the ability to move portions of your business, if not your whole business, into the cloud, there's just a lot to figure out. So I quite often use this analogy with many of our clients that I worked with, and it really seems like today's systems climate is very much like staring at a tidal wave coming at you. You're just really initially not sure what to do. You know, how do you react? Are you going to quickly put a plan in place to get over this wave without significant impact? Are you going to, like I do when I go to the beach, I try to dive through the wave and swim as hard as I can to get to the surface so I can take a next breath? And usually that is effective. And until I was in Hawaii one year and the waves were much bigger, and that was a whole other issue when I kept swimming and just didn't quite make it to the top. Luckily I did. And then there's those folks that just sort of curl into a ball and brace for it to hit them. So we're sort of interested in that analogy of where you guys are with your environment and your posture to deal with this change coming your way. So we put a quick fun poll together here. And Russ, if you want to put it up for a second, it's basically asking you that question. If you can take a minute to do that, let me see if Russ can get that up or not. I don't see it. Russ, are you able to do that? If not, we can skip it.
Yeah, it's up. I'll close it out in a couple seconds.
Okay, good. I'll give everyone a few seconds to answer that, to see what's coming your way and how you're going to react to it. Might be interesting to see the answer here. Okay, Russ, I think we're good.
Yep. Are you able to see those results there, Troy?
No, I don't see it on my end here. But
all right, so I'll just quickly run through them. So we had 64% actually said that they're planning now, so they're kind of ahead of the game. 18% said they will try to dive through the wave and swim hard, and 18% said curl up and do nothing.
Well, good luck to those curl up and do nothing. We'll be thinking of you. So it's good that a lot of people, and the majority of the folks on the phone, have a plan that they're trying to implement to get over this wave of information and progress coming your way. You know, if you don't, it's going to be disruptive. It's how you deal with that moving forward. So here's a little bit about how we approach this. And we're doing assessments here internally for a lot of our clients. And we have a process that's been built on over 23 years of doing this. So we think we have an effective, valuable way to do it. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Janet, and she can sort of walk you through the progress of how we attack these things.
Thanks, Troy. So great. Thanks for answering that poll. It's definitely interesting to see what other customers are doing. Here at BTRG, I definitely head up our assessments, especially from an HCM perspective. But we have the same assessment methodology for financial, supply chain, even our reporting, Hyperion assessments, and security assessments that we do. And the process really is fairly straightforward. We certainly start with a business and technology alignment phase, where we really listen to you, your business drivers, management direction, technology drivers, and we'll go through each of these steps in more detail so you guys see what it is that we are looking for and how we assess those things. Hopefully that will help you in your planning phase or next steps. The second step is an as-is health check. So this is where we really dive down into your current state, looking at all encompassing of your functionality that you're using, the infrastructure that it's supported by, and lastly, and most importantly, the people that are there to help support these initiatives and systems going forward. Then we move into what we call a transformational assessment phase, where we do look at that new functionality that is available, everything in that wave that's coming at you, the new technology, and how it's really going to impact the people in your organization. And lastly, and what you're really looking for as output from an assessment gives you the strategy and roadmap that you'll be able to utilize to either upgrade or migrate to another solution, how you're going to deliver that from a technology perspective, what risk you might encounter in following the recommendations that are laid out for you in the strategy, and lastly, are you able to really help support this through a change management process. So our assessment goes through these 4 steps, and we will now go into each of those in a little bit more detail to give you some information around what it is we're looking for and what we do. So the first phase, being that scoping phase, is how I kind of look at it, planning and scoping. So we really are looking at decisions you may have already made or direction you're getting from the managers in your organization. So have you already decided that you're just going to upgrade to 9.2 and you don't need to look at other solutions or anything to do with cloud adoption? Has management turned to you and said, we want to be on the cloud in 2 years? And you're sitting back thinking, how are we going to do that? How can we get there in 2 years? We also want to look at areas around your organization's mission and goals. This part's really important and sometimes overlooked, especially from an HCM perspective. A lot of your goals or mission statements might include things like, we have a very big customer service aspect, or we want to enable our employees to do more self-service. So we really look at that mission and goal statements and make sure that our assessment is also driving the results back towards your organizational goals. And then lastly, and what comes out of this phase, you can see there in the black on the left, we really have a very well-defined assessment scope. That's the areas of focus that we're going to look at. And lastly, how we're going to analyze it, what scorecard categories we're actually going to look for. And that's the majority of this presentation, is really what we're looking at and what we think you should be looking at during the assessments. Okay, so for the assessment scope, these are the areas we're really focusing on for our customers. Obviously, not a full list, but typically we first start with the applications that are in scope. We're doing an assessment right now for a customer. We're looking at HCM, financials, supply chain, and Hyperion. So it's a very large assessment, and again, the scope is what we look at first and try to define. We have another assessment that's very small. It's HR and payroll only within the HCM area, and it is PeopleSoft only. We're not looking at any cloud deployment. So we try to get that hammered out first with our clients. It includes all the things you see listed there, as well as ELM, any of the business intelligence tools, and as I said before, Hyperion. Next, we look at whether or not you're going to stay on premise, or is there any desire to move even a portion or a component to the cloud. So we'll make sure we understand your business drivers there. We'll explain and talk to you about either platform as a service or PeopleSoft cloud architecture, as Troy talked about before. And then, of course, we'll look at which business processes are included in the scope. Is it just onboarding? Is it performance and comp? From a financials perspective, is it the whole procure-to-pay life cycle? So we'll make sure we handle the business process methodology and understand which business processes are in scope and which are not. And then lastly, and it's definitely something that's very important in the news a lot lately, we really want to make sure that you can take advantage of some other offerings that we have. That includes the PeopleSoft vulnerability assessment, some data masking, database activity monitoring, and lastly, encryption. So these are things that you can determine if they're in scope or out of scope for the assessment if BTRG were there to help you. So we definitely go through that nice scoping process in the first week to 2 of the process or the project. As far as the meat of the assessment or scorecard goes, we then walk you through what we consider our categories. And we do have quite a few predefined categories that we look for when we're assessing a customer, and 7 of those are listed here. And we'll talk through these 7 today and why they may or may not be important to you. If they are, then we certainly would recommend that you include those in the scope of any assessment that you do. Those listed here, compliance, audit, and accountability. A big one is business process improvement. We'll look at how we can modernize your systems. Do you have a modern system or not? How is your company handling decision support, analytics, and reporting? How good are your resources and the skills that the individuals that have to support these systems? How good are those, and what improvements need to be made? And the last 2 are pretty important. Agile deployment and adoption. Again, going to the new release of PeopleSoft with the PUM update, the new images that are coming out. How quickly can you be agile and adopt these new images and new features? And lastly, how well do you service your customers, your clients, your employees and managers, those individuals that are consumers of your data? So we'll look at these areas today, and these are the things that we would include in an assessment for you. Okay, so that's the as-is health check portion. So once we have the scope defined, your categories, we move into the second phase, which is that as-is health check. You might call it current state assessment. There's a lot of different names for it. But basically what we do in this phase is definitely go into in-depth information gathering, and we use a number of different ways to do that. So we have discovery sessions, workshop sessions, we do interviews, and we have a very large predefined set of questionnaires that our consultants use to walk you through this in-depth information gathering session. This can take anywhere from 2 weeks up to 10 weeks, depending on the scope of the project and the availability of your resources that are being interviewed or we are meeting with. And this is the information that makes up the scorecard that your organization gets that comes out of the as-is health check. So this is a very important part of the process, and it does take most of the time. So this is where we go through those categories with you, and the questionnaires are set up and easy to walk through from a process to follow, but it does involve a lot of good information. So the first one we do kind of look a lot into is the compliance, audit, and accountability area. And this really looks to see if you're maintaining strong policies and procedures, especially around things like security or segregation of duties, data accountability, the ownership, who owns the data, is the data reliable, is it secure? Are your business processes able to be audited? Is there a control around that? If a payroll manager is entering a new hire and also paying that individual, we have some issues there around segregation of duties. And lastly, we look into any internal or external audits that you may have had done at your organization, and we make sure we focus on those areas where you've scored lowly or have some issues. So this area is very much attuned to strong policies, procedures, and are you compliant with your software and policies as they are stated today. The next section that we go into is probably the largest portion of the assessment, and it's because it is the business process improvement area. We want to optimize all the critical business processes that you have. How mature are your processes, or as I sometimes see, how out of date are those processes? What improvements can be made to each of those? And again, we'll have that scoping exercise that tells us which business processes are important to you and the ones that we are assessing. Other areas, user experience and adoption. Do users actually use the system, or are they exporting the data to Excel spreadsheets and doing most of their work outside of the system? That would be a big problem that you might want us to look into and make recommendations around. And finally, this is that area, as I said before, that we're going to focus on those business processes. hire to retire for HR, contracts to cash, procure to pay, and so forth. So again, this is the largest part, and we really are wanting to streamline your system, empower your end users, utilize some of the features you may or may not have already installed and purchased, like approvals or self-service, and really align those with best practices. So you're taking advantage of your investment in the product. Okay. Modern systems, a short one here, but what we're really looking to do here is what is your appetite for full cloud suites, cloud architecture, like moving PeopleSoft to the cloud, the fluid UI, how's your interaction or user interaction with the system? Is it a modern look and feel? And lastly, just on this page, mobile enablement. So is your organization ready to allow users to use their phones to access PeopleSoft or other solutions to perform their day-to-day tasks? So this area will really focus on whether or not you're ready and your organization is ready to adopt some of these new modern type system technologies. Okay. Moving on to the last few, an area that we see a lot of customers really needing improvements in is around reporting in general, decision support, analytics reporting. We're really going to dive down into, is your data accurate? Can you in a timely fashion, get that data out to those that really need it? Are you able to predict things that are happening in the organization to help with better decision making? So business intelligence, workforce metrics, and system analytics. We're definitely going to look at those areas. Does it take weeks or months for you to produce your monthly reporting? Is your IT department constantly writing reports? Are they doing it in SQR or PeopleSoft query? May there be better ways to do this where you can push that out to your end users and really shift the focus of that work to them. So this is an area that we see a lot of improvements are available, and we do see fairly low scores in these areas. The resource and skills, again, just like it sounds to you, we're definitely going to look at and highlight the gaps between what your current staff knows and what they need to know in order to support a more advanced and modern type system. So we'll do a skills assessment of everyone in the organization that's tied to the scope of the project. Excuse me. We'll also put together a development plan for those areas where you do score lowly, and then a resource plan. Do you have too many people? Do you have too few people, which is what we find the case to be in a lot of instances? Can we shift the focus of a resource from one area to another? So again, really wanting to make sure that they fully understand the new functionality that's come out, the new technology. They can support their users, their end users, as well as give them some development so they can move forward in their career as well in learning new features and functionality. Okay. Agile deployment is an area that really we see a lot of customers today wanting to consolidate. So we've talked with a number of hospitals that want to consolidate hospitals down into one system so it's easier to maintain. So there's a lot of consolidation that could happen to make a system more agile and make you able to adopt new features versus having to support 10 databases. Now you're going to consolidate those into one and make your organization much easier to move from release to release, for example. That allows you that continuous feature adoption. So what we find as barriers here, systems are overly customized. They are also in need of supporting technology. So it's nice to apply an image and get great new functionality, but by the time you've done the testing and training on that, the next image is already out. So you need to be agile enough to put a testing strategy in place that allows you to get through these images in a much quicker fashion than you're used to, especially for a PeopleSoft organization that upgraded every 2 to 3 years or 2 to 4 years. Now you're looking at 10 different opportunities, 10 to 12 during each year, that you can apply new features or tax updates to your system. And lastly, in this area, we're really looking at helping you put together a change management strategy that supports all of this new technology and new feature adoption that you want to put in play. Lastly, service delivery. We have a number of organizations wanting to go to a shared service center model. which is a great thing. So we do look at assessing whether or not your organization can do that and what it would take to bring you to a shared services center, or implement help desk solutions, or roll out a better or more fluid or easier to use HR and finance portal. So those are areas that we would focus on during the service delivery category. Okay, so what do we use, what tools do we use to do this? So I just wanted to give you a couple of examples. Again, we're not showing you everything that we have, but I just want to show you some examples. So this is a sample questionnaire for the business process improvement areas, and it really does focus on the HCM and the person model in general. So something very, very small area to show you here. So we do have the assessment topics already defined. They will be structured and they will be detailed specific to your company. In this case, if we were to work with you. And this is just an example of the different types of people in the HCM database, what discovery items we're looking for, what observations we make while we're doing these assessment workshops or interviews with your SMEs or subject matter experts in your company. We'll then meet together, put together recommendations around the observations that we've seen, and give you a score per topic within these data collection points. So you can see here we use a 5-point scale, 1 to 5. 5 is you're aligned with best practice. 3 might be neutral if you maybe are not using that functionality or see no need to use that functionality, or you're halfway there but you really haven't implemented it truly to its full capability. And then again, 1 being not aligned at all. We'll also put together a list of impacts or comments around what our recommendation will be. And then the best part is the expected benefits that you're going to see by implementing the recommendation that we've made. So this is an example of our data collection point, one of them. And we use that to come up with a scoring mechanism for your organization for that specific topic. This is another example, again, unfortunately HCM related, that's my field of expertise, but just looking at your position or job structure. How are you utilizing position management, for example? Are you a static organization? The observation in this example, and this is an actual example from one of our customers, they were using partial position management. They had 907 positions. They had over 1,200 employees. So it was there was some disconnect there, and they really were an organization that should have been utilizing full position management. And you'll see here there were many, many recommendations and benefits that they were going to achieve by moving to a full position management structure. Again, they were only 2 partially aligned because they were partial position management, and they really weren't being consistent in how they created positions and or created their job codes for those individuals not in positions. So again, just an example here, I wanted to show you what the questionnaires look like for sample. So once we have gone through the full assessment process and given you scores in the areas that we've looked at, we do use pivot grids, reporting bar graphs to analyze the data and display that resulting scorecard to you. Again, just an example, you can drill down into the areas that are listed here. And in this example, you can see this customer for the 7 categories that we just went through. They had a few that were pretty good. Their business process was fairly good at a 4. Their resources were very knowledgeable and skilled. They stayed up on the latest as best as possible. But things that they didn't do well, they really had a lot of segregation of duty problems. They weren't able to push out self-service to their end users, so their service delivery was very poor. We do interview a lot of the end users in this case and get their feedback on how well they feel like either the HCM department or finance department or whoever it is that's servicing them is doing. So we look into it even at that level of detail and do interviews and questionnaires with the end users. So you can see here the scores that they got overall in all assessment categories. And then if I drill down into, let's say, Agile deployment, we break it down by topic. So here, again, they did have quite a few different systems that we needed to consolidate for them. They were not all on PeopleSoft. They had a performance management that was outside of the system and a few others. They could not continuously adopt new features. They were highly, highly customized. They did use HPQC, and they had a very good testing strategy. So they were high in that area. And lastly, they had a change management strategy in this case, but it was not at all well prepared to take on self-service delivery when they wanted to roll that out. So these were their scores in those areas. And again, just an example so you can see what the scorecarding system looked like. So once we get the scorecard completed and we have that information at our hands, we move into the third phase, which is really the new information, or what I call a lot of the times future state. So in this area or this phase of the project, we really want to look at the new functionality that's available, the new technology, and we want to demonstrate that to you. So for a lot of the PeopleSoft customers, this is similar to doing a fit gap of new functionality, a demonstration, a pilot of the information so you guys can see if it really will work for you. Piloting technology, maybe mobilely deploying the paycheck to your phone just to see if that's something that might be you could utilize in your organization. And then lastly, we'll give you impacts to your resources, skills, and change management based on the new functionality and technology that you're choosing to implement. So again, this is where we really focus on the new features and do something like a fit gap or pilot demonstration of what we found during the as-is health check, being lowly scored and with opportunity to move forward with new features. Okay, the last phase, the strategy and roadmap. So what do I get out of this? This is the best part for your executive team. They want to see that strategy, that roadmap. We'll do an executive presentation to your stakeholders. We'll give you the final scorecard, a full document of all our assessment findings and recommendations. So a very large Word document, nothing fancy here, but you get all that information that we collected. A 1 to 5 year roadmap, depending on what you wanted or what you scoped out in the beginning, a delivery plan for those recommendations, and lastly, what you really need, how much is this going to cost and how much time is it going to take. So all these things come out of the assessment. They're very important to sometimes make that business case that you need. So an example of our roadmap, and again, not the actual, just a sample, but it is based on one of our customers. Based on our assessment findings, the first thing they were going to do is actually redesign their position management. So without doing anything yet, the first 3 months they took just to redesign and create positions for all of their one-to-one mappings for their employee to position. They also then found that they didn't know who everyone reported to. So we had a big supervisor hierarchy issue at this customer. So the next month we were going to take to actually determine who really reported to whom. And with position management, it really was a position to position, but who was in each position. So we did that in the next month. And then lastly, we were going to start their 9.2 upgrade. So we're getting ready to do that. We're preparing, and you can see that I've also included in here in the roadmap when the images are coming out, because they're on 9.1, they're upgrading to 9.2, and it is important to know which image we're going to go live on. And unfortunately, I do have a typo there. So PS017 should be April, PS018 is July 15. So that's the one coming out there in mid-July. So we will end up going live with them end of August on image 17. So that is their roadmap for their PeopleSoft application, but we have other pillars or other swim lanes that we're working with them on. Mobile deployment was another area. After we get the upgrade going, at the time we do deliver the upgrade, they also want to roll out manager self-service and a mobile deployment, as well as the paycheck for mobile deployment. So there will be some features and functionality that their managers can take advantage of on their phones and other iPad and so forth. But those were the two they really focused on, wanting the managers to be more empowered, as well as the employees to be able to go out there and actually see their paychecks in a mobile deployment fashion. Okay, so that's a sample of the roadmap. And then lastly, I just want to talk about a couple of benefits of an assessment, and hopefully you've heard a few today or thought of them on your own. But basically, we really want to provide you with the ability to create that visibility and align your technology with your mission and goals, your organization's mission and goals. Provide that strategic and tactical analysis. So make sure that we've identified opportunities for business process improvement. And the last three, very important, clarity and a blueprint. So that roadmap or blueprint is really important to tackle what we're calling age of continuous change, especially with the PeopleSoft images or any other cloud deployment. And most importantly, you've probably been asked for a business case. Why should I upgrade? Why should I move to cloud? I need that business case, and I need to know how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost. So definitely out of these assessments, you get that real easy to understand roadmap of what to do when, what benefits you're going to achieve, and how much it's going to cost. So we think that's very important for you to move forward. Okay. So hopefully this information has been important to you, and I'm going to turn it over back to Troy just to kind of follow up and see if you have any of these reasons to do an assessment. So Troy, go ahead and take it away.
Yep, thanks, Janet. And I think that you've laid out a really great foundation to do the most part of getting over that wave that's coming at you that we talked about earlier. So I deal with a lot of clients on a daily basis that are asking these questions is, what should I do? How should I tackle this? And it's funny, literally yesterday we were discussing with one of the three legislative branches of the United States, and all they wanted to know from BTRG is, what are other people doing? What are other people doing? And that's a big piece of this as well. I think that we have the ability to bring those stories of what's working well, how have other people tackled the same scenario that might be a little bit ahead of you in the process. How have they done it successfully? And then even probably just as importantly is what's failed. Having that information is very important. So here are a few things that I think that if you internally look at to say, is an assessment right for our organization? Do we need this, or can we just trudge forward in our current plan? One of the first thing is, do you see the tide receding? And this is again a reference to that tidal wave of information coming your way and big piece of choice that you have to decide how to deal with. Before tidal wave, if the tide goes out, the tide recedes, and a lot of villagers know that, and they know to get out of the way when that happens. A lot of people don't see that as a sign, and they end up getting a wave on the top of their head. So I think it's important you understand, do you see this change coming? Are you having concerns early on about how you're going to adopt this, and how are you going to be able to do all this testing and repetitive functionality adoption? Is it doable? How are we going to tackle it? That's one of the things. Second, just as Janet mentioned earlier, are you being asked to provide a business case for your upgrade? And this is more common than not. A lot of folks are saying, we're on 9.1, we would love to go to 9.2, but is it worth it? I need to build a business case to give to our business to say, hey, we are going to get a benefit. There is a return on investment to either go to 9.1 or go to the cloud or go to a co-adoption scenario where you're running core businesses on PeopleSoft and maybe a few external on the cloud, which is more common at this point as well. Second one is something that that a lot of you are probably facing with Oracle representatives, and that is, are you being pressured to move to the cloud? There is a great push from Oracle. All the messaging that you see from them probably focuses on cloud and getting you there somehow. Are you being pressured from your executive level folks saying, we got to go to the cloud, we have to go to the cloud, how are we going to get there? This is a good way to approach that as well. Fourth one I have down here, are you being driven to modernize your systems? I always take a look at when we go into organizations that have been around for a long time, they're using desktop computers and that type of thing. Now the world isn't like that anymore. The world is turning to mobile capabilities and being able to approve vouchers and send a bill out or pay an invoice from your iPad wherever you are. It's very difficult to sit at a desk and do your job all day. That's changing, and systems are changing with that. And then lastly, are you being asked to provide a strategic roadmap? That's probably the most important part of this. It's great to get a good grasp of your current state and a very clear picture of where you are and how to improve that situation, but really, what are you going to do from this point moving forward for the next year, for the next 3 years, for the next 5 years? As Janet said, it's a time of change. That you have to adopt and change the processes that you're dealing with now to be able to digest this information in a timely manner, to digest this change and find it useful, to make your organizations more strategic moving forward. So with that said, I think I listed 5, there's probably 100 of reasons why you should probably look into doing an assessment. I don't want to turn this into a sales pitch for BTRG. Our method was built on 23 years of experience doing it. And I think that the 5 or 6 components of it that Janet covered today are the most important components. Those are the things that no matter if we do it, if a partner does it, if you do it internally, you want to make sure you cover those components. You don't want to spend time and effort and not get value from that. That's one of the things that we always track, as well as, are our clients getting value from these assessments? Are they putting these things into actions and following through with our findings? So we find that very important. If you want to go ahead, Janet, and move this forward, intelligent decisions really start with smart dialogue, and we truly believe that. So if you have any questions about what went on today, if you have any questions about the direction of PeopleSoft or cloud or anything about your systems and what's going to happen in the future, we're very in tune with Oracle. We work very closely with their product folks on both the cloud and PeopleSoft side. We have a pretty good idea of what's coming, and we can sort of shed some light on that for you, because I know really overall it's sort of a confusing environment right now. So let us be your guide, sort of your system Sherpa, for lack of a better term, and either reach out to Janet, and you can. She has an easy one. It's just askjanet@btrgroup.com, and I'm sure after this her email will start dinging a lot more so than mine will, being the sales guy. But we appreciate your time today, and if you have any follow-up questions, I think you can actually type them in the question box now if you haven't already. And Russ, maybe I'll ask you, has anyone asked a question yet? Or maybe we'll give them a minute here to do so, and maybe we'll try to tackle a few today if there are some.
Yeah, we can give people a minute here. It doesn't look like any immediate questions have come in yet. I just also wanted to add that we will be at Collaborate out in Las Vegas in what is it, next week, Troy, or is it 2 weeks?
It's the 10th through the 14th, I believe, of April, yep.
So if anybody will be out there, details around our presentations and our happy hour are on our website. We'd love to meet you out there as well.
Perfect.
It doesn't look like any questions have come in. Again, if you think of any, feel free to reach out to Janet or Troy. We'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Do you guys have anything else?
No, we appreciate everyone's time, and thanks, Janet, for your input today. I think that was some great information that's very usable to our clients, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.